The sinister secrets of a body left for 5 months. 6 haunted tales from the morgue revealed. The air hung thick with dread as Sarah stepped into the morgue, the cold biting into her skin like fingers of ice. The stark fluorescent lights flickered above, casting eerie shadows that danced across the sterile walls. There, on a gurney, lay the lifeless body, forgotten and forlorn, decomposed and draped in tattered clothing that clung to it like the wrapping of a long-forgotten present. A body that had festered in secrets, left to rot in the dark corners of a crumbling town for 5 agonizing months. And now, it bore a chilling familiarity that left Sarah's heart racing as she hesitated. The metallic scent of blood mingled with the sterile atmosphere, invading her senses and sending shivers down her spine. The body's face was partially obscured by disheveled hair, but the contours sparked a memory she wished to erase. A cold sweat broke across her brow. What twisted fate had led this person to end their days in a place that reeked of despair and death? Each thud of her heart echoed in the sterile chambers, the silence almost deafening. What else was Maplewood hiding? With her grip tightening on her own trembling hands, Sarah felt the darkness of this mystery weaving around her like a shroud. It wasn't just the body that felt wrong. It was the town itself. The faint hum of life just outside the morgue's doors now felt patronizing. Neighbors strolled by, exchanging furtive glances, shadows creeping under the warm lights of the failing diner. They wore their smiles like masks, hiding a sinister truth. "Mom?" Jake's voice broke through her fog. He looked at her, his youthful curiosity sparking like fire against the steel of dread. "What's going on?" She pulled herself together, brushing her worries aside. "Just a rough night, buddy." But she knew it was much more. As they ventured back into the chill of the moonlit streets, Jake's inquisitiveness shadowed her every thought. Together, they delved deeper into rumors fluttering like moths to flame, tales intertwined in the fabric of their community. Whispers turned to shouts. The elderly man at the corner store had been seen lurking around the morgue, muttering dark curses. Searching for clues pulled them into a labyrinth of hidden truths, drawing them closer to a dangerous edge. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Every discovery bore a weight heavier than the last, unraveling the shroud of innocence Sarah clung to, turning familiar faces into creatures of the night. She and Jake stumbled into their own web of investigations, even drawing the ire of neighbors who felt invaded. Mistrust rumbled beneath surface smiles. Each frantic breath began to echo the chilling danger that loomed in the shadows, waiting, watching. In a heartbeat, everything changed. A confrontation loomed like a cloud overhead, tension slicing through the air, sharp enough to be felt. As they turned a corner, the elderly man stood there, eyes hollow and haunting as he warned them to stop digging. His form lit by moonlight appeared like a ghost, a specter of the town's unfathomable secrets. The walls seemed to pulse with the dark energy of unrepentant history, closing in on them. As the familiar safety of their home emerged in the distance, a sinister chill wrapped around Sarah's heart. How could she protect Jake from a truth that threatened to unravel everything they knew about love, community, and survival? Would the dark forces of Maplewood consume them both? The question gripped her tightly, leaving her breathless as she glanced back into the shadows, wondering just what lay ahead. The night pressed down on them as they hurried home, the unyielding silence broken only by the soft crunch of gravel beneath their feet. Jake walked beside Sarah, his eyes wide and filled with questions. She could feel the gravity of the haunting warning from the elderly man, still echoing like a ghost in her ears. Each step felt like a perilous descent into a deeper unknown. "Mom, what did that man mean?" Jake finally asked, glancing up at her, voice trembling slightly. She sighed, pushing back the wave of terror threatening to swallow her whole. Yes, just a crazy old man people like to talk. But even as she spoke, she knew it was a lie. The deeper they dug, the more danger lay ahead. Suddenly, the streetlights flickered, plunging them into darkness before bursting back to life. The beam of light illuminated the shadows lurking just beyond their reach, twisting into dark shapes that flickered just out of sight. Sarah's heart raced, each thump a reminder of the urgency clawing at her gut. She grabbed Jake's hand tighter, forcing confidence into her voice. Let us keep moving. As they reached the familiar facade of their house, the calmness of their front porch felt like a false security. The door creaked open, revealing the dimly lit hall beyond. As they stepped inside, a chill swept through the air, making her shiver. It wasn't just the cold. It was the sensation of being watched. Her instinct screamed, "Mom, can I play my video games?" Jake asked, breaking the eerie stillness, but Sarah shook her head. "Not tonight, honey. How about a movie instead?" The unease lingered on her skin like cobwebs, clinging to her tighter with every breath. Just as she moved to flip on the television, a loud bang came from the back of the house. Sarah's heart dropped. The sound cut through the air like a knife. "Stay here," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Jake nodded, eyes wide as he pressed against the couch, trying to hide behind it. Slowly, Sarah edged toward the kitchen, her heart pounding in her chest. Each step forward seemed to echo around her, amplifying the suffocating silence of the house. The darkness seemed to breathe with her, wrapping around her as she reached for the kitchen light. It sputtered briefly before illuminating the space, revealing nothing out of place. The familiar clutter of dishes and crumbs felt mocking in its normalcy. But then the cold grip of instinct surged. It wasn't just the house that felt wrong, it was something else. The back door stood ajar, swinging slightly as if it had been pushed open by a crippling wind. "Jake," she called, trying to maintain steadiness. She rushed to the door, heart racing. "Come here. Now." The moment he entered the kitchen, the door slammed shut behind them. The solid thud echoed ominously. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Was it the wind? Or something more sinister? The kitchen lights flickered again, illuminating the room in staccato bursts, mounting her growing panic. What's happening? Jake's voice trembled, the shadows shifting around them. And then, as if summoned by her fear, a whisper floated into the air, cold and mocking. "You shouldn't have come back." Sarah, a chill swept through her, leaving her frozen in place. The familiar warmth of home was suffocated by a creeping dread, intertwining with the secrets that clung to Maplewood like a curse. Each breath now felt like a warning, every heartbeat a countdown. What had she awakened? What had she unleashed? With heart racing, their eyes darted around the room, searching for the source of the voice, realizing the danger was closer than ever. But before she could muster a command, the lights plunged them into darkness once more. "Mom?" Jake's voice cracked, barely breaking the suffocating silence. A chill of realization gripped Sarah. What if they weren't the only ones within these walls? The question twisted in her gut, sharp as a knife. Just as she thought there might be a way out, the whisper returned, more insistent this time. "You don't know what you've done." How could Sarah protect Jake from the unseen terror? What had they stumbled into? As dread unfurled its dark wings, the niggling fear opened a chasm, revealing a truth more terrifying than death itself. In that instant, a creak echoed from the darkened corner of the kitchen. Slowly shifting and coiling, something was there, waiting in the shadows. The room held its breath. Shadows danced along the walls, and Sarah could barely hear her own heartbeat over the horrifying stillness. Just moments ago, their home had felt like a sanctuary. Now it felt like a trap, closing in around them. "Mom, I don't like this." Jake's voice quivered, cutting through the thick silence. Panic was a tangible thing, pressing against her chest. "Should just stay close to me," she whispered, her eyes glued to the corner. It was there again, a shifting shadow, something almost human but twisted and wrong. "Turn on the light. Please, turn it on," Jake pleaded, his small frame trembling beside her. Before she could reach for the switch, the whisper slithered back into her mind. You shouldn't have awakened what was dormant, it echoed, reverberating through the kitchen like a sinister chant. Both mother and son jumped as the sound of something scraping against the floor broke the stillness. Terrified, Sarah's breath quickened. She willed herself to look, forcing her eyes to adjust to the dimness creeping through the space. As the lights flickered to life once more, revealing the kitchen in stark relief, dread weighed heavily upon her. Sarah, the voice was closer, a guttural rasp that felt like ice settling in her veins. "Get away from there," screamed Sarah, pointing at the back door, which now swung wider, as if inviting them into the darkness outside. But no sooner had she shouted than a figure drifted into view. It was a woman, her long hair hanging limp and tangled, her face shrouded in shadow. She smiled, or at least attempted to, but the expression didn't reach her deadened eyes. "Mommy, help me," the thing crooned, voice sweet and all wrong. The moment shattered Sarah's resolve. She turned to Jake, her mind racing. "Run, Jake, now!" They stumbled back, retreating toward the living room. But the air around them felt thick, almost like running through molasses. Every instinct screamed at Sarah to escape. The entity, a blasphemous mockery of humanity, followed, gliding toward them with an eerie fluidity. "What do you want?" Sarah's voice cracked with fear. She desperately scanned the room for something, anything, to protect them with. The lights flickered violently before plunging them into darkness again. Sarah felt Jake's small hand clutch hers as the oppressive weight of silence descended. It seemed to pulse, reminding her of her own dread trapped within. Just as she thought she had a grip on the situation, a soft giggle echoed in the void. It was a child's laugh, innocent yet drenched in malice. "I've been waiting for you, stop it," screamed Jake, his voice filled with fury and fear. He stood firm, a feeble but brave defense against the creeping terror. Suddenly, she felt icy fingers graze her arm. The touch sent her into a frenzy. "No!" she shouted, spinning around, ready to confront the unknown. But the moment she turned, the chilling laughter stopped, leaving nothing but the sound of their heavy breaths. Jake's face was pale, but determination flickered in his eyes. "We need to get out. We can't go through there," Sarah said, pointing toward the door now sealed by an unseen force. Trapped between the dark entity and the kitchen, adrenaline surged through her. She remembered the old man's warning. "Perhaps it's tied to the house," she thought. "Maybe if we can—" "Mom!" Jake's voice rose, pulling her back to the moment. The children's laughter returned, this time mingling with a low growl. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, alive with something sinister. The wooden floors rattled beneath them, shaking as if to mock their fear. "What is it?" she whispered, backing away from the kitchen. But there was nowhere to run. A loud crash erupted from behind, and with a swift glance, she saw a shadow lunged at them from the corner, towering and grotesque. The child's laughter transformed into a wail that reverberated through the house. Every fiber of her being screamed to flee, but Sarah was rooted in place. Had they truly awakened something hellish? Or was it just a long-forgotten part of this house's past? The air grew, colder, suffocating. Just as she thought she could escape reality, the shadow twisted, transforming into something that felt hauntingly familiar. "Mommy!" In that moment, Sarah's heart sank. The realization engulfed her like a wave crashing over shore. The entity was not just a stranger from the dark. It was a tortured echo of something that had once been her own. "Jake!" she breathed, dread pooling in her stomach. "What if it's looking for us?" The fright washed over her, making her feel lightheaded. Fear hung in the air, thick and suffocating. What had they awakened? As she felt the cold brush against her cheek, she turned, eyes wide, heart racing. The kitchen door creaked open again, beckoning. "Mommy, let us play," and she knew then, with a dawning horror, they had all become part of a game far more sinister than she ever imagined. What had they truly awoken when they returned home? What terrible truths lay waiting behind that door? The air crackled with an electric tension as Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. The whisper now felt like a sinister breath curling into her ears, taunting her. "Let us play" echoed again, becoming a chant that twisted her insides. It was wrong, so wrong. This wasn't a game. It was a massacre masked in the guise of innocence. Jake, hold on to me, she instructed, panic sharpening her tone. They had to move, but the shadows seemed to conspire against them, swirling together, thick like fog, turning corners into grotesque shapes. Suddenly, the entity lunged again. With a scream caught in her throat, Sarah pulled Jake tight against her side. She felt the coldness creep closer, a biting chill that wrapped around her like a shroud. The thought of running through the dark, falling into an abyss, was insurmountable. "Mommy, please," the voice pleaded again, now layered with desperate longing, the tone curdling Sarah's blood. "What do you want from us?" she screamed, frustration clawing at her sanity. The laughter returned, but this time it was accompanied by whispering shadows, flickering in the corners of her vision like candle flames about to go out. Jake's grip tightened on her hand as he whimpered, "I want to go home." His words struck Sarah like ice water. This was home, or it had been. There was a shuddering thud from upstairs, a sound that rumbled through the walls and echoed in her bones. What if she wasn't alone? What if there was something lurking, watching, waiting? "Mom!" Jake's voice broke her reverie. What if it's been waiting for us to come back?" She shook her head fiercely, trying to dispel the thought. "We have to find a way out," she insisted, but every option seemed sealed. Every hallway vanished into blackness. This was a game they didn't understand, and they were the pieces on a board made of nightmares. "Mom, look!" Jake pointed at the back door, now open, a gaping maw luring them outside. Shadows huddled at the edge, whispering secrets Sarah dreaded to hear. Summoning every ounce of courage, she began to back toward the door. "We're leaving. Now." But as they neared the threshold, a form flitted past. It appeared now here, now there, a childish silhouette with hollow eyes that glowed in the darkness. The shape beckoned to them, its smile wide but all wrong, a chasm within a face that shouldn't exist. "What do you want?" Jake shouted, his voice trembling. "Play with us," it sang, the melody haunting and sweet. The whispers grew louder, and Sarah felt herself drawn into their pull, as if strings tied around her limbs urged her to answer. She yanked Jake back, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Stay close." Panic surged in her veins. With each passing second, the shadows heightened, pressing against the walls of their reality. She gripped Jake's hand tighter and turned, darting for the living room where they might find safety. But the laughter swelled, filling the room, a cacophony that made her vision spin. As they crossed into the living room, the portrait on the wall caught her eye, family, smiling, trapped in time. It was the same as before, yet the eyes they shifted, now watching her closely. "Mommy, it's coming." Jake's voice was shrill now, filled with unbridled terror. Sarah turned back toward the kitchen, where a shimmering wave of shadows rippled into the room, morphing into a monstrous figure that loomed over them. "Playtime," it hissed, each syllable dripping with malice. The front door slammed shut, locking them in with the creeping darkness. There was no escape. "Mom!" Jake screamed as the room grew colder, shadows leaking from the walls. Time froze, thick and oppressive, leaving Sarah with an impossible choice: confront the nightmarish echoes of the past or run deeper into unknown horrors. "Mom!" And just as the dark figure lunged forward, the lights flickered, illuminating the space for a chilling moment. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she beheld something that made her heart stutter there, just behind the shadow, a flicker of familiarity in its monstrous form. "Is it you?" she gasped, realization crashing over her like a wave. But the shadows recoiled, ready to consume. Had they truly awakened this horror? Or were they simply uncovering something buried, something that sought to reclaim its place in the flesh? What terrible truth awaited them beyond the threshold of that laughter? The shadows writhed, their thick mist wrapping around Sarah like fingers gripping her throat. The figure remained shrouded in darkness, but for that brief moment, she caught a glimpse of something. Was it really there? A desperate, twisted face that sparked a memory buried under layers of fear. It was all collapsing in on her. "Mommy?" Jake's voice trembled, pulling her back from the brink of her thoughts. The room seemed to swell and contract, as if it breathed with a life of its own. She had to act. "Stay behind me," she ordered, a desperate fierceness burning in her chest. They couldn't let this thing grab Jake. Not again. With each step back into the hallway, the laughter crescendoed, a mockery of their plight. A voice threaded through. "You should have never come back." It was the truth buried deep in her mind, the secret bleeding into the present. The cold enveloped them, wrapping around the edges of her sanity. The walls whispered her name, scratching at familiar wounds. She dashed into the first room she could reach, heart racing. It was the old office, lined with dust and memories. The once warm space felt alien now, its air thick with decay. "Mom, where are we going?" Jake whimpered, shivering uncontrollably. "I want to go home." "But this is home," she whispered, more to herself than to him. The broken glass from the scattered picture frames littered the floor, glinting ominously under the flickering light. With a pang, she remembered a day filled with laughter here, colors bright and the sun dancing through the windows. Now it was a tomb, Jake's tiny frame pressed against hers, seeking warmth and comfort amidst the chaos. "Please don't let it get me." His eyes widened in fear, staring into the ever-thickening darkness that seemed to seep through the cracks, creeping closer like hungry wolves after a lost lamb. "Nothing will hurt you, I swear," she promised, even as doubt crept into her resolve. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, causing them both to jump. The monstrous figure loomed larger on the edge of her vision. "Time to play," it taunted, its pitch piercing through the suffocating silence. "Run," Sarah shouted, grabbing Jake's hand and pulling him toward the door that led back to the hallway. But before they could take 2 steps, the shadows surged forward like a tidal wave, billowing and stretching toward them. Jake gasped. "Mom, it's getting closer." "Into the pantry," Sarah urged, dragging Jake into the small space, its door barely closing behind them. The scent of something sweet and earthy mingled with the bitter taste of terror stuck in her throat. Darkness surged, filling every crevice. It pressed against them, suffocating. Jake's breathing quickened, echoing in the confined space. "What is it, Mom? What does it want?" Her mind raced. Something from before. She could feel the panic radiating off Jake like heat from a fire. And then she heard it, a gentle knocking, almost playful, against the pantry door. Sarah's heart sank. "No, it can't be. Let us play." The voice trilled softly, mimicking a familiar cadence that had haunted countless nights. Sarah held her breath. How could whispers of childhood turn so malevolent? "Don't say anything. We stay quiet," she whispered, pressing a finger to her lips. But even as she uttered the words, she felt a tug in her thoughts, an urge to answer that magical call. "Help us." The voice breathed, wrapping around her mind like ivy. A part of her felt drawn to it, memories clawing at the edges of comprehension. "Please, we have to go." Her own voice trembled but rose above the whispers, fighting to pull her down the dark path of memory. As she braced herself against the door, ready to charge out, everything fell silent. The weight of expectation thickened the air, pressing in like an unseen force. Then, there came a soft click. The lock released. The pantry door creaked open slowly. Shadows shifted, swirling as if teasing her with the sigh of release. What lay beyond was a swirling darkness, pulsing with a life of its own, mocking her uncertainty. "Oh God," she whispered under her breath, staring into the void. A deep chill coursed through her veins. What awaited them on the other side? "Stay behind me, Jake," she whispered, crossing the threshold into the unknown, propelled by a haunting truth, yet desiring to escape the very thing that now beckoned. What awaited her in that ghastly darkness was about to unveil more than she could ever imagine, a truth that twisted the very essence of who she thought she was. The shadows erupted, swallowing Sarah and Jake like a predatory embrace. As they stepped into the darkness, tendrils of mist coiled around their ankles, dragging them deeper into an abyss where reality twisted. She squeezed Jake's hand tightly, praying her grip alone could shield him from the unseen horrors that lurked. "Mom?" Jake whimpered, eyes wide, glistening with tears. "I'm scared, me too," she confessed, her heart racing like a drum in her chest. She could hardly breathe. The air weighed heavy, thick with an acrid scent that stung her nostrils. It was like the smell of rotting earth from the depths of the darkness. The voice resonated again, now closer, the cackling filling her ears. "You shouldn't have opened the door," it crooned. A rush of dread flooded her gut. How did it know? Each syllable coiled around her thoughts, constricting like a snake. She clenched her eyes shut, trying to block out the eerie whispers, but they echoed louder, wrapping around her mind, refusing to let go. "Let us play a game," it continued, the air thickening with sinister glee. "You're both so close it makes it all the more fun." Sarah's pulse quickened. "We have to move. We have to find a way out." Just then, the pantry walls groaned, shifting as if the house itself was alive. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface, like the infamous markings of countless screams etched in stone. She pulled Jake along, pushing deeper into the suffocating shadows. "Mom!" Jake cried, tugging her shirt. "Look!" What Jake pointed to filled her with dread. In the dim light, shapes began to emerge from the surrounding darkness, faint outlines of familiar faces. They were distorted, twisted, mouths twisted in silent screams. She felt bile rise in her throat. Were these the lost souls of her past? "Help us," echoed the voices of long-forgotten friends and family. A mother's desperate plea mixed with a child's cry. "No, no, this isn't happening." She shook her head, fighting against the tide of despair that clawed at her chest. The dam of her resolve threatened to crack, but Jake's terrified grip kept her anchored. "What do we do?" "Just keep moving, don't look at them," she urged, pulling him past the figures. But their haunting presence seeped into her thoughts like poison. Memories floated to the surface, tragic snapshots of laughter turned to sorrow. Faces she thought she had buried years ago were now coming back to accuse her. The darkness pulsed with a malignancy that seemed to grow angrier with every step. "You think you can escape?" the voice hissed, now sounding amused. "You left us all behind." Jake started to scream, his voice thin and panicked. "Mommy, they're reaching for me." A silhouette surged toward them, arms outstretched, clawing at the air. Sarah's heart thundered. Without thinking, she yanked Jake closer and shoved forward, eyes locked onto a faint glimmer of light that flickered like hope in the crushing blackness. "Hold on," she shouted, adrenaline fueling her movements. The figures leapt out, grasping, fingers grazed her skin, chilling her to the bone. She could feel their whispers clawing at her mind. Just as the light seemed tangible, something heavy crashed around them, plunging Sarah into icy darkness. She tried to shield Jake, but a force pulled him away from her grasp. "Mommy!" Jake's scream rang out, laced with sheer terror. "No!" She lunged, reaching out as he vanished into the consuming dark, his cry echoing until it dissolved into silence. "Welcome back, Sarah," the voice hissed, low and mocking. "It's time for the real game to begin." Chilled to her core, Sarah's breath hung heavy in the air. "What do you want from us?" The shadows shifted, revealing more faces turning on her once again, smirking in malicious delight. Then they whispered something she couldn't quite make out, but left a bitter taste of despair on her tongue. A new truth loomed, demanding to be uncovered. Was this her past returning to haunt her, or an inescapable fate? "Jake!" She screamed into the suffocating void, desperately hoping he'd return. But the silence that followed was deafening, and fear clustered around her heart. What did it mean, "Welcome back"? As she struggled against the waves of darkness, revelation and dread intertwined. The deeper truth of her family's past was one she was about to unearth. Would it bring them together or tear them apart forever? The silence stretched, wrapping around Sarah like a suffocating shroud. Her heart pounded hard against her chest, each beat a reminder of Jake's desperate absence. Where had he gone? Panic surged through her veins, igniting a wild urge to scream again. "Jake!" she managed, her voice cracking. The name echoed eerily, fading into the thick, oppressive stillness of the pantry. The darkness felt alive, pulsating and twisting as if her fear fed it. It knew her pain, The mocking laughter returned, swirling around her, a cacophony of tortured souls. You shouldn't have left him, it taunted, undulating like an unseen wave. Breathless, Sarah turned, feeling the icy grip of despair close in around her. I didn't leave him. I'm coming for him, she shouted defiantly. But the shadows responded with a chilling chuckle, deep and cruel. With a determined resolve, she forced herself to step deeper into the darkness, fueled by instinct. I need to find him, I have to. A gnarled hand burst from the shadows, grasping at her, fingers long and twisted like rotten branches. She recoiled, heart racing. In this nightmarish place, the line between victim and monster blurred terrifyingly. A scream clawed its way up her throat, but she bit it back, focusing instead on the flickering light that beckoned from somewhere deeper within. It danced tauntingly just out of her reach. Come play, the entity breathed, a chilling whisper that sent shivers cascading down her spine. The voices rose around her, swirling like forgotten memories, each weaving fearful tales of betrayal and loss. It'll be so much fun, she staggered back, shaking her head in defiance, refusing to let their despair capture her. No, I want to be a pawn in your game, she shouted into the suffocating void. Ah, but you already are, came the response, chillingly calm, echoing through the darkness. Their laughter intertwined with distant cries, pulling at her heart. She felt her strength waver, anger and terror battling inside her. To lose Jake to this cage of horrors was unbearable. Rushing forward, guided by the blinding glimmer of the light, she pushed deeper, her resolve hardening. Suddenly, the shadows thickened, blocking her path. Faces emerged, unrecognizable yet strikingly familiar. The clamoring voices morphed. They were past friends, relatives, all demanding justice. You left us, they wailed from a maelstrom of anguish, each word piercing through her like jagged glass. The echo of guilt established a heavy weight in her chest. I didn't mean to. I tried, she pleaded, choking on her words, tears forming in her eyes. What you tried is irrelevant, a deep voice growled. Their suffering is your doing. With every shriek, every outstretched hand from the shadows, Sarah felt her sanity unravel. She had to keep moving, but the darkness wrung around her legs like chains, pulling her down. Jake! She screamed again, her voice cracking under the pressure of surging despair. And then she heard it, a soft whimper from the shadows. Her heart leaped, a flicker of hope igniting. Jake! I'm coming! Hold on! She lunged forward toward the sound, tearing through the creaking shadows, pushing past the grasping fingers that tried to pull her back. Don't! You'll regret this! The shadows hissed, but Sarah, fueled by maternal instinct, pressed on in a sudden burst. She broke through a thick veil of darkness, and there stood a spectral door glimmering faintly, almost beckoning her. A low hum vibrated through the air, pulling her closer. She placed a palm on the door, her breath hitching. Inside, she could sense another world waiting, one where Jake might be lost forever, or where the very truth of her haunted existence might reveal itself. Jake, she whispered, trembling as she pushed the door open wider. What lay beyond could either save them or seal their fates forever. Would the secrets hidden here drag her further into despair, or would they set her free? The air crackled with tension, the shadows retreating slightly as she crossed the threshold. Whatever awaited her on the other side would unveil the darkest recesses of her heart. And beneath the faint light, she felt a chilling breeze that whispered one last thing, a promise of revelation. You were not prepared for the truth in that moment. Sarah realized the game was far from over. Crossing the threshold, Sarah was engulfed by a blinding light that felt both warm and suffocating. As the door swung open, the air shifted from cold despair to a haunting stillness. The brightness was sharp against her eyes, momentarily blinding her and leaving her vulnerable. When her vision cleared, she found herself in a narrow corridor lined with old, peeling wallpaper, dimly lit by flickering bulbs that hung from the ceiling like forlorn stars. The walls pulsated with unease, vibrating with the weight of despair that seemed trapped within them. The faint hum from before faded into silence, replaced by the muted sound of her own breathing. Jake? She called out again, her voice a hoarse whisper. The corridor stretched ahead of her, ominous and endless, begging her to step further into its embrace. She hesitated, feeling the darkness lingering just beyond the door she had left behind, clawing at her like hungry beasts eager to reclaim their prize. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of her eye. She turned sharply, adrenaline coursing through her veins. A figure loomed at the end of the corridor, a dark silhouette that seemed to pulsate like the shadows surrounding her. "Who's there?" she demanded, but her voice quivered, betraying her fear. The figure stood still, merging with the dark, as if mocking her panic. The air grew thick. The hallway pressed in on her, the walls closing in like a vice. She gathered her courage, inching forward, heart hammering like thunder against her ribcage. "Jake, are you there?" A soft sob echoed off the walls, a sound so haunting that she almost turned to flee. "Help me!" The plea came from beyond the figure, a raspy whisper that froze her blood. Sarah's instinct propelled her onward, despite the claws of doubt digging into her mind. With every step, the figure sharpened into focus. It was a woman, her eyes hollow and sunken, hair hanging like dead weeds. "You shouldn't be here," the woman rasped, her voice a chilling melody of despair. "Please, I'm looking for my son," Sarah cried. "Have you seen him?" The woman's expression flickered between pity and malice. "Yes, lost. Just like us." Those words hung heavy in the air. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. The corridor darkened further, shadows creeping in as if feeding off her dread. "No, I won't accept that," she shouted, the frustration bubbling into rage. "I'll find him. Then you'll pay the price." The figure began to dissolve into the darkness. Panic soared in Sarah's heart. She bolted forward, reaching desperately toward the fading form. "Wait," she screamed, but the corridor echoed only her voice, amplifying her isolation. The woman had vanished, leaving nothing but whispers crawling along the walls, breathless. Sarah turned to her right, where an open door beckoned, its frame slightly ajar like a mouth waiting to devour her. The sobs intensified from within, a melody of lost souls. She braved the threshold, pushing the door open wide. Inside, there were shelves stacked with old newspaper clippings, photos fading into obscurity, a mosaic of pain and tragedy. Each piece told a story of sorrow, and her heart raced as she recognized one of the faces. A missing child from a nearby town. In a sudden swirl of memories, the truth clawed at her throat. The whispers became coherent. They spoke of betrayal and injustice, of bodies left behind, forgotten after months of neglect. "Jake," she gasped, the realization slamming into her. Could he be part of this twisted history? "Mom?" A voice pierced through the harrowing din, soft yet haunting. It was him, Jake. She lunged forward, desperately searching the room for her son. But the darkness thickened, filling the corners with anguished cries of the lost and anguishing in her heart. Something twisted, the whispers growing louder as she realized the truth was even darker than she had imagined. "Step up or stay forever lost," the voices chanted, circling her like vultures. Fighting against the tide of despair, Sarah shouted into the swirling shadows, "I'm coming for you, Jake. We'll find each other." Could love break through this web of terror? She held tight to her will, charging against the throbbing shadows that threatened to swallow her whole. She reached deeper into the room. The cries transformed into laughter distorted and cut through with malice. The room began to tremble, and the amassing darkness became a storm. And within that storm, she realized, the more she fought, the more the shadows closed in. What was the price for seeking the truth? Would she find Jake? Or would the darkness claim her as another forgotten whisper lost to time? In the chaos, all her fears coalesced into a single thought. Maybe the only way out of this nightmare was to embrace the very terror she battled against. The question hung in the air as she stood at the edge of her sanity, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The darkness surged, feeling alive, as if it realized her defiance. The shadows twisted and churned through the air, forming claw-like tendrils that reached for Sarah, desperate to ensnare her. She stumbled backward, breath hitching as the room swirled into chaos. "Jake, where are you?" The desperation clawed at her throat, vying for release. The laughter around her grew more frenzied, bouncing off the walls like a taunt. Then, just as suddenly, everything stilled. A heavy silence fell, thick and suffocating. Panic fizzled, leaving an unsettling calm. Shadows hung like long fingers in the dim light, but something flickered ahead, a flicker of hope, or a trap. With each step deeper into the shadowy room, Sarah felt the air change. The laughs twisted into whispers again, huddled together like conspirators, and she pushed forward. Her heart hammered like a drum echoing in the silence, a steady reminder of her mortality amid a whirlwind of uncertainty. Among the shadows, she spotted a shape, a small figure crouched by the far wall. It was shaped like a child, and dread washed over her. "Jake?" she called, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and dread. The figure froze, slowly lifting its head. Mom, a chill enveloped her. The face that gazed back was not her son's but a copy, distorted, eyes sunken, mirroring the woman from before. "Why did you come here?" it whispered, voice echoing in the hollow space. "Why did you open the door?" "I was looking for you," she pleaded, stepping closer despite the terror lancing through her veins. "You have to help me find Jake. Please." But the child simply shook its head, a sad smile creeping across their face. "You can't find him here. Not in their world. This is where lost things go." All the lost things, the figure gestured, and the shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Sarah's stomach churned. "No, he is here. I can feel him." She felt the walls closing in again, that sense of despair thickening like a fog. Another voice pierced through the murky haze, deep and sinister. "You cannot save him. He belongs to the shadows now." This voice coiled around her heart, squeezing until she gasped. "Leave him alone," she shrieked, rage igniting her fear. Suddenly, the walls of the room shimmered, and the oppressive atmosphere shifted. Then it happened. A figure stumbled into the room from the other side, illuminated by a sudden flicker of light. It was Jake, just as she remembered him, his small frame framed by darkness. Relief and dread twisted together in a painful knot. "Mom!" he cried, reaching out. But before Sarah could respond, a cold hand gripped her ankle, pulling her down. The child's laughter erupted around her, a cacophony of mockery that filled the room. "Join us!" they echoed, and Sarah felt the floor tremble, yawning wide under her, darkness shimmering with unspeakable horrors. "No, I want tea," she fought, kicking free and lunging forward. "Jake, don't move." Facing him, she felt the warmth of his small body as she wrapped her arms around him. But as she hugged him tightly, a chill ran through her. The comforting weight turned to smoke, disappearing just like the shadows around them. "Mom, help me," Jake's voice echoed, pulling her away from the brink of despair, if only for a moment. But the air spun, and the darkness rushed back in waves. The whispers swirled angrily, dragging at her resolve, hissing promises of despair and torment. "What will you sacrifice to save him?" they hissed as slender shadowed fingers curled around Jake's fading image, twisting it into a nightmarish grin. Clutching her head, feeling sanity fraying, Sarah screamed, "No, I'll do anything." But the haunting voices only echoed her words back to her in malicious glee. Sarah felt queasy as the truth rolled over her like a tide. What would it take to break this cycle? To evade this nightmare? In this dark labyrinth, choices lay tangled in the shadows, and each awaited its chance to ensnare her. "Sarah," the voice was soft yet chilling, "embrace your terror. Only then can you free him." A thunderous heartbeat resounded in her ears. Would she dare? With shadows swirling, her heart raced. What monstrous price was waiting for her on the other side of fear? As the darkness consumed her, Sarah whispered to the abyss, "I'll do whatever it takes now." The question lingered, could she bear the weight of that choice if it meant saving Jake? Or was she already too lost in the dark? The shadows wrapped around Sarah like a suffocating blanket, squeezing tightly as if daring her resolve to buckle. Her heart thundered against her chest, each beat a declaration of her determination. I'll do whatever it takes with those words. The darkness pulsed in response. A cacophony of hushed whispers danced at the fringes of her mind, enticing and terrorizing. Outside of this void, she was a mother desperate to save her son. But within, she was being called to confront her deepest fears. Was this the reckoning she had evaded? A price she had to pay? The air thickened with dread as Sarah felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her, the laughter of lost souls blending into a symphony of despair. With Jake's distant cries piercing through the veil, she grasped at the brave flicker of hope that ignited within her chest. "I'm coming, Jake!" she shouted into the stifling dark, clinging to that beacon fiercely. The shadows writhed in protest, eager to swallow her whole, but the warmth of her motherly love fueled her forward. Each step felt like wading through mud, but she pressed on through that disorienting swirl, eyes wide and searching for any sign of her son. "I will find you," she boomed, her voice echoing defiantly back at her. Suddenly, flickers of clarity broke through chaos, illuminating a path ahead. Shapes formed in the darkness, their features unfurling into faces those of loved ones lost, trials faced, and decisions made long ago. "You left us," they whispered, their words sharp and barbed, but Sarah held firm against the tide of doubt. "I did what I thought was right," she countered, anguish mingling with conviction. "But I'm not leaving him." Through relentless shadows, she maneuvered, inching closer to the outstretched hand she could almost grasp. In that moment, she felt him. Jake lingered just beyond her reach, his presence radiant yet frail, teetering on the precipice between worlds. "Mom!" he cried, his voice a shaky plea tangled with fear that Sarah's breath hitched but steadied. "Jake, hold on!" She surged forward, heart ablaze. But the void fought back, pulling her closer to that treacherous edge. A figure surged forth, a grotesque reflection of the child she cherished. "Play with us," it hissed, twisting innocently into something dreadful. The words echoed like a siren's song. "No!" Sarah shouted, shaking her head vigorously. "You're not my son." She charged past the nightmarish visage, propelled by fierce love. "Mom! Help!" Jake's voice rang clear. That cry slashed through her resolve, igniting a fire inside her. With clenched fists, Sarah surged through the remnants of despair, fueled by the incandescent bond that stretched between them, unfurling against the shadow's grasp. "I choose you," she declared. An energy crackled through the air. A shattering scream erupted from the swirling shadows as they twisted and contorted violently. Sarah felt the darkness recoil, unraveling in a spectacular display of fated horrors. Each scream a poignant memory reclaimed. With determination galvanizing her, she plunged forward into the frail light that flickered ahead. "Jake!" she called, breath coming in sharp bursts. And there he was, his form wavering like a ghost, but much more vibrant than before. "Mom!" He screamed again, reaching for her as he stood, framed by light. "Help me!" In a heartbeat, Sarah lunged for him, heart soaring, arms stretching out. "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here." As their fingers brushed, a wave of warmth enveloped them both, a comfort that shattered the lingering shadows that had clung so desperately to that cursed place. Light seemed to bloom, spreading through the darkness like flowers breaking through snow, illuminating everything around them. The room trembled, the specters screamed, their forms dissolving into nothingness, uprooted by her love. With one final pull, Sarah grasped Jake's hand firmly in hers, pulling him away from the clutches of despair. The world around them shuddered before erupting into a blinding brightness. Then, silence. They emerged into the warm glow of their home, familiar, safe, bathed in sunlight, filtering through the curtains. Sarah stood in the living room, clutching Jake's hand tightly. They had escaped. "Mom!" Jake exclaimed, his small voice filled with the unfiltered relief of survival. "You found me. You really found me." Sarah dropped to her knees, enveloping him in a fierce embrace, tears of exhaustion mingling with joy. "I'll always find you, Jake. Promise." She smoothed back his hair, now familiar, vibrant, and so precious. Together, they sat on the floor, warmth flooding around them, the laughter of the outside world spilling through the open windows. Whatever darkness had ravaged their lives was now scattered, blown away, unable to seep back into their sanctuary. The burdens of whatever had been left unspoken felt lighter. As Sarah glanced into Jake's innocent eyes, joy and relief washed away the past, the haunting dread of calling Maplewood home. But she knew one thing. They would face the future together, fiercely united, a bond stronger than any darkness could threaten. "Mom," Jake asked, a curious look drawing itself across his face. "Will we tell them what happened?" Sarah paused, pondering the other side of fear, the shadowed past that had almost claimed them. "Not everything, but maybe one day if we need to. Sharing the truth can help others, sometimes." Jake nodded, understanding beyond his years as he curled against her side. In that embrace, the shadows melted away, the secrets of Maplewood, for now, kept at bay. Together, they would step into the sunlight, the warmth of new beginnings beckoning them forward. And as the door creaked open, a soft breeze carried whispers of hope. Now, dear friends, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep this community growing. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this heart-pounding conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ultimate twist. Your support means everything. Thank you.